There's many different sides to Jay-Z. There's Jay-Z, the drug dealer turned rapper, Jay-Z the entrepreneur, and of course, Jay-Z the elevator punching bag. But not that many people know just how dark the street side of Jay-Z got. I want to tell you about a little known altercation between a preteen Jay-Z and his older brother, which may make you think twice about the millionaire mogul. But to understand this, we've got to start at the beginning of Jay's story. Anybody that's listened to a Jay-Z song will know he had a bit of a hard time growing up. He can't go a single song without shouting out the rough Marcy projects where he grew up. Marcy was a notorious Brooklyn project that was well known in the 80s and 90s for being an absolute haven of crack cocaine and violence, referenced in many hit rap songs. The Marcy projects were immortalized in pretty much every Jay-Z project ever released, as this delightful Chappelle Show sketch, The World Series of Dice.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Marcy Projects here in Brooklyn, New York. Why are we here? To buy weed?
When you think about it, so many good rappers have built their career on having terrible childhoods. I kind of can't help but resent my parents for not dropping me off at age 12 with a bag of crack and a notepad in one of the rough estates in London so that I could have grown up to be one of the greats too. Now, what separates Jay from everybody else that made music during this period is not only was he able to flip that rough background into something positive, turn himself into a success through music and be able to make all the money, get all the girls and have all the overpriced jewelry and cars that all the other rappers had, but he was able to take it to that next level and build an actual multi-million-dollar business enterprise on all of this. I've always admired Jay-Z's business acumen, and he's been basically able to turn himself into a billionaire, making hundreds of millions of dollars in many different industries beyond music. Fashion, alcohol, and sports management. He's basically like Bill Gates, if Bill Gates wore Rocawear jeans and occasionally stabbed some of his executives. Jay-Z's an interesting case because throughout his entire career, and despite basically being a billionaire, he still tours and consistently puts out music when he is too rich to have to do any of this shit. I mean, how can you knock the hustle of the guy that literally wrote the song, You Can't Knock the Hustle? I remember back in 2004 listening to Black Album, which is probably the best album of all time. If you haven't heard it, you better go and listen to it. And the whole album was basically about Jay-Z's retirement and this being his last album ever. And from that point, Jay-Z went on to have one of the most successful retirements of all time. He's technically been out of the game for 14 years, and in that time, he's put out 7 albums, 6 of which have gone to #1, and he's gone platinum 8 times over. Now that's pretty productive for a retirement. All my granddad's been able to do is plant some tomatoes at his allotment, and those are not going platinum anytime soon, despite what the local fair would have you believe. So throughout his entire career, he's contrasted his entrepreneurial success with his rough upbringing and created so many anthems of positive empowerment for people to enjoy. However, there's a few stories from Jay-Z's past that he specifically shied away from in interviews, specifically those stories that are a little bit more violent from his past. As well as that, he's also suspiciously reluctant to talk about any of the early songs in his career, such as when he used to be part of a rap group called Original Flavor and when he appeared in this hit song Hawaiian Sophie. So you might be familiar with the story from the title of this video if you're a diehard Jay-Z fan, but if you're a casual listener, chances are you'll have never heard this before and you'll have never heard him speak about it before either. Jay-Z went as far as to flat out refuse to answer a question about this during a CBS interview that went on to actually win an Emmy Award. I personally find this a really interesting fact because it does make you wonder, is Jay really reluctant to talk about this because it's simply too painful for him to recall? Or is it possible that he wants to try and talk up his gangster past, and it might be the case that the fact is simply just not as interesting as the myth surrounding it? The story goes that when Jay-Z was 12 years old, he shot his crack-addicted older brother Eric, who was 16 at the time, shot him in the shoulder for stealing a 2-finger ring that a girl had bought for Jay. Now this all went down when Jay was 12 years old, and the age of 12 is really important because this was around the time that Jay's father, Adonis Reeves, actually left the family, the same year that Jay had actually gotten into drug peddling. So of the few accounts that I've been able to find online about this story, what I was able to find out was that actually Jay-Z's 2 sisters and another girl who gave him the ring were actually present at the time that he shot his brother. And it also said that the reason why he did this was partly because a lot of things has gone missing from the family recently, and they believed Eric was stealing from all of the members of the family to try and feed his drug habit. It was during the year that Jay's father had left the family, and one of the accounts said that the reason Jay did this, especially in front of his family, is because he wanted them to feel like he was protecting them. There's pretty much only one song where Jay does speak about this, and it's the song You Must Love Me. Saw the devil in your eyes, high off more than weed, confused, I just closed my young eyes and squeezed. What a sound, opened my eyes just in time to see you stumble into the ground. In one account relating to this story, Jay said that he thought that he was going to jail forever and that at this moment his life was over. Interestingly, Jay-Z does go on to admit that this was the only time that he ever shot somebody. And also, there's not a lot of information out there about his brother Eric, who is still alive and who is pictured with Jay-Z and Beyonce in a few different occasions online. Although Jay-Z is very reluctant to talk about this story, there's a lot of accounts where he's very willing to talk about an occasion that he was shot at. He says that he was shot at 3 times from an assailant that was only 6 feet away, so I can only assume that the assassin forgot his glasses that day. Now, in the article where Jay talks about this, he makes a really creepy comment. It's an old Vibe magazine article from about 1996 where he's talking about being shot at and he's talking about shooting his brother. In that article, the interviewer asks him if he's ever killed anybody, and he says that if he had ever killed anybody, he wouldn't tell anyone, which is just a little bit creepy. So in the same breath of not admitting that he shot anybody but his brother, he also wants to add that mystery that he maybe could have killed someone. I mean, talk about having your cake and killing it too. I don't want to make the case that Jay-Z's a liar or that these stories have been embellished, but I do think it's interesting the way that he's handled this story over the years. In modern day rap, you've got guys like Rick Ross who are basically portraying this image as this big drug kingpin, even though everybody knows that it's not true. Everybody knows that he used to work at a prison, and the fans just don't care because the music's good. People like Rick Ross and all of the modern artists these days come from this era where, and I'm gonna make myself absolutely die of cringe here, where street cred is not really as important as it used to be. I mean, the fact that the phrase street cred is never really used anymore, and it's completely cringeworthy, is definitely a testament to how little people care about it nowadays. Don't get me wrong, I mean, there's some artists whose backstories and street creds and crime sheets have made them popular. If you look at Tay-K and what he did with The Race, that guy was literally on the run from multiple murder charges is the reason that he blew up. But that's a specific case, and that's not mainstream pop, hip-hop crossover music. If you listen to any song by Lil Pump, the guy would have you believe that he's literally been moving bricks of cocaine. But anybody who looks into him can see that he's basically been a full-time musician since he was 13. But the difference is, Jay-Z comes from the era of realness, where people actually need to live the things that they rap about. For me, I could actually care less whether Rick Ross actually sold drugs, or whether Jay-Z actually murdered people, or whether he actually shot his brother. Being the entrepreneur that he is, you can definitely make a business case as to why he's left this so ambiguous. By keeping quiet about this story for all of these years, he lets the listener decide how real they want it to be, and he gets the best of both worlds. If you want to believe the stories and gossip behind Jay's street background, and if that makes the music more enjoyable to you, then you can believe that. But if you'd rather just believe that it's a well put together story to give more context to him as an entertainer, you can believe that too. But whether or not you believe all of the street stories surrounding Jay-Z, there's one thing that's undeniable, and that is he is one of the greatest rappers of all time. If you like that video, make sure that you leave a comment and like and subscribe below. This is the first kind of hip-hop mythical lore type story that I've done. I'm thinking about doing more. I've got a lot more ideas. So if you like these and this gets a good response, I will make sure that I do more. Until then, peace out. Thank you for watching.